Clara Hayes stood in the cramped living room of their one-bedroom apartment, her waitress uniform half-buttoned, one hand clutching a grocery list scribbled on the back of an envelope. A stack of overdue bills sat on the kitchen counter, next to a half-empty cereal box. Her 8-year-old daughter, Lily, knelt on the threadbare carpet, her small hands arranging pieces on an old wooden chessboard, its edges worn from years of use by her grandfather, Henry. Clara's heart sank as she watched Lily's intense focus. "Sweetheart, you can't bring that chessboard to the hotel," she said, her voice soft but strained, exhaustion from her double shift creeping in. "It's my work, not a place for games." Lily's brown eyes, bright with stubborn determination, met hers. "Grandpa said I'll need it when people don't believe in me." Clara froze, the mention of her father stirring a pang of grief. Henry's chess lessons had been Lily's refuge since his passing, and Clara couldn't bear to take that away. "Fine," she sighed, zipping her jacket. "But keep it hidden, okay?" Lily nodded, clutching the board as they headed out into the chilly evening. The Grand Meridian Hotel's marble lobby gleamed under golden lights, a stark contrast to their dim apartment. Clara's sneakers squeaked as she guided Lily through the employee entrance, her nerves fraying at the thought of the high-stakes gala ahead. The ballroom was a dazzling spectacle, chandeliers casting prisms across tables draped in white linen, the air thick with perfume and the clink of champagne glasses. Clara adjusted her apron, her hands trembling as she grabbed a tray of smoked salmon blinis from the kitchen. "Stay right there," she whispered to Lily, pointing to a shadowed corner near the service door. Lily obeyed, setting up her chessboard on a small utility table, her small frame nearly lost among the bustling staff. Clara weaved through the crowd, offering appetizers to guests in tailored suits and shimmering gowns, their laughter sharp and careless. Mr. Alcott, the hotel manager, caught her eye, his thin face twisted in a scowl. "One slip tonight, Clara, and you're out," he hissed, his voice cutting through the chatter. "Victor Sterling's gala demands perfection." Clara nodded, her throat tight, and forced herself to focus, her tray steady despite the knot in her chest. Scene 2.5. A glimpse of envy. As Clara served a group of laughing investors, she caught sight of Tessa Vaughn across the room, Victor Sterling's secretary, adjusting her sleek black dress. Tessa's polished exterior hid a flicker of unease, her eyes scanning the room as if searching for an escape. Clara envied her poise, the way she moved effortlessly among the elite, but noticed Tessa's fingers nervously twisting a bracelet. Their eyes met briefly, and Tessa offered a small, strained smile before turning away. Clara's tray wobbled as she pushed down a wave of inadequacy, refocusing on her task. Lily, meanwhile, moved a pawn on her board, whispering to herself, "Knight to e4, just like Grandpa showed me." A passing waiter smirked, muttering, "Kids playing pretend in a place like this." Clara overheard, her jaw tightening, but she kept moving, determined to avoid trouble. The room's energy shifted when Victor Sterling strode in, his broad shoulders commanding attention. Tessa trailed behind, her heels clicking, her expression a careful mask. Cameras flashed, their light glinting off Victor's cufflinks as he shook hands with a senator, his booming laugh drowning out the string quartet. Jackson Reed, a wiry influencer with a phone glued to his hand, grinned into his livestream. "Ladies and gentlemen, the king himself has arrived," he shouted, his voice carrying over the crowd. Victor's presence was magnetic, every guest turning to watch the billionaire CEO who thrived on spectacle. Across the room, Evelyn Moore stood alone, her crimson dress sharp against the sea of black and gold. Her eyes, cold and calculating, tracked Victor, her lips curling into a faint smirk. Clara offered a blini to a guest who ignored her, her heart pounding under the weight of the night, her eyes darting to Lily to ensure she stayed out of sight. Victor's restless gaze swept the ballroom, landing on Lily in her corner. She sat hunched over her chessboard, moving a knight with quiet precision, oblivious to the gala's chaos. Victor's laugh sliced through the noise, sharp and mocking. "What's this?" he called, striding toward her, the crowd parting like water. "The waitress's kid thinks she's a grandmaster?" Clara's tray trembled, a blini sliding dangerously close to the edge. The guests chuckled, their laughter a wave crashing over her. Lily didn't look up, her fingers hovering over a bishop, but Clara saw her daughter's shoulders stiffen. "Sir, she's just playing quietly," Clara said, stepping forward, her voice barely audible. Victor turned, his eyes glinting with amusement. "Quietly? She's got a chessboard in my gala. Tell me, Clara, is it? Does your kid think she's the next Bobby Fischer?" The room laughed louder, the sound pressing against Clara's chest. Lily raised her head, her gaze steady. "I just like to play," she said, her small voice cutting through the noise. Victor's grin widened, a spark of challenge in his eyes. Tessa shifted uncomfortably behind him, her fingers tightening on her clutch. Evelyn leaned against a pillar, her smirk deepening, while Jackson's camera zoomed in, capturing every word. Clara wanted to pull Lily away, but Victor's voice cut through again, sharp and unfinished. "Let's see if you've got any real moves, kid." Victor Sterling leaned over Lily's small table, his shadow swallowing the chipped wooden chessboard, the pawn he twirled between his fingers catching the chandelier's golden light. His voice, thick with mockery, carried across the Grand Meridian's ballroom, silencing the chatter of the elite crowd. "You like to play, huh?" he said, his grin sharp as he held the pawn like a trophy. "Tell you what, little one. Beat me at this game, and I'll write you a check for $50 million. Right here, right now." He paused, letting the number hang heavy in the air, then leaned closer, his eyes glinting with cruel amusement. "But if I win, your mother polishes every shoe in this room. Deal?" Gasps rippled through the guests, followed by laughter and whispers, their phones already out, capturing the moment for social media. Clara Hayes stood frozen, her waitress tray trembling in her hands, a single champagne glass wobbling on its edge. Her heart slammed against her ribs, the weight of the room's eyes pressing down on her, each laugh a needle in her skin. "Mr. Sterling, please, she's just a child," she said, her voice barely rising above the murmurs, thin and shaky. Lily, her 8-year-old daughter, didn't flinch, her small hands resetting the chess pieces with a calm precision that sent a shiver through Clara. "Deal," Lily said softly, her brown eyes locked on the board, steady and unyielding. Jackson Reed, the influencer circling the crowd with his phone, nearly stumbled, his voice booming through his live stream. "This is insane, folks. A billionaire versus a kid for $50 million? You're watching history live." The ballroom buzzed, the air thick with anticipation, every guest leaning in, their amusement tinged with curiosity, as if sensing something unexpected brewing. Clara dropped to her knees beside Lily, her tray abandoned on a nearby table, the clatter swallowed by the crowd's noise. "Sweetheart, this isn't a game anymore," she whispered, her voice cracking, her hands hovering over Lily's small shoulders, itching to pull her away. "You don't have to do this. We can just go home." Lily's hand paused over a pawn, then squeezed Clara's fingers, her touch warm and steady despite the chaos around them. "Grandpa said never run from a challenge, no matter who's across the board," she said, her voice quiet but resolute, as if channeling her late grandfather, Henry Dawson. Clara's breath caught, memories flooding back. Henry's late-night chess lessons with Lily, his calloused hands guiding her through moves, his quiet insistence that she could outsmart anyone if she believed in herself. Clara wanted to shield her daughter from Victor's cruel spectacle, to spare her the humiliation of a room full of strangers laughing at their expense, but Lily's calm resolve rooted her to the spot. Tessa Vaughn, Victor's glamorous secretary, stood behind him, her manicured fingers tightening on her clutch, her eyes darting between the child and her boss. Her polished exterior cracked, a flicker of unease crossing her face, as if she sensed the game was more than Victor's usual power play. Across the room, Evelyn Moore, Victor's ruthless business rival, sipped her champagne, her crimson dress stark against the sea of black and gold. Her sharp eyes gleamed, and she muttered to herself, "This girl's trouble for him." Clara caught the words, her stomach twisting with a mix of dread and a faint, desperate hope that Lily could somehow hold her own. Victor slid into the chair opposite Lily, his broad frame dwarfing the small table, the crowd forming a tight circle around them, their whispers like static in the air. Clara overheard a guest in a tailored suit murmur to his companion, "She's just a kid, what's Sterling playing at?" A woman dripping in diamonds laughed softly, her voice dripping with condescension. He's toying with them, poor things. It's almost cruel. Clara's nails dug into her palms, the humiliation burning her cheeks, but she kept her eyes on Lily, who moved her knight to open the game, her small fingers steady against the worn board. Tessa lingered nearby, her polished facade faltering as she leaned toward Victor, her voice low and hesitant. Maybe this isn't the best idea, she said, her words barely audible over the crowd's hum. Victor silenced her with a sharp glance, his eyes glinting with amusement. Relax, Tessa. It's just a bit of fun. But Clara saw the conflict in Tessa's face, a flicker of empathy that made her wonder if Victor's secretary felt as trapped by his games as she did. Jackson Reed circled the table, his phone capturing every angle, narrating feverishly to his live stream audience. Folks, this is wild. A billionaire CEO versus a kid in a hotel ballroom. The stakes are unreal. Clara's heart raced, her eyes darting between Lily's calm focus and the crowd's growing excitement, her mind screaming for a way to protect her daughter from the spotlight's glare. Victor made his first move, a pawn to the center, with an exaggerated flourish, his cufflinks flashing as he leaned back, earning cheers from the guests. Let's make this quick, kid, he said, winking at the crowd, his voice dripping with confidence. Lily studied the board, her face unreadable, then moved her knight again, the soft click of the piece cutting through the noise like a challenge. The room watched, half amused, half curious, as Victor played fast, his pieces advancing aggressively, each move punctuated by a smug grin that made Clara's stomach churn. She stood frozen, her breath shallow, every laugh from the crowd slicing into her like a blade. But Lily's calm was unnerving, her eyes flicking across the board as if she saw something no one else did, her small hands moving with a precision that echoed Henry's lessons. Evelyn Moore edged closer, her champagne glass forgotten, her expression shifting from amusement to intrigue, as if she recognized something in Lily's strategy that Victor couldn't see. She's not playing for fun, Evelyn muttered, her voice low but clear enough for Clara to catch, igniting a spark of hope that felt dangerous in its fragility. Clara's mind drifted to a memory of her father, Henry, sitting with Lily at their kitchen table, the chessboard between them under the dim glow of a single lamp. It's not just about the pieces, Lily, he'd said, his voice warm but firm, his eyes bright with pride. It's about knowing your opponent's heart, what they want, what they fear. Clara blinked back tears, the memory grounding her as she watched Lily now, her daughter's small hands mirroring Henry's precision, her focus unbroken by the crowd's noise. Victor, oblivious to the weight of the moment, laughed as he captured one of Lily's pawns, holding it up like a trophy, his voice booming. You're making this too easy, kid. The crowd chuckled with him, their amusement a weight on Clara's chest, but she noticed Tessa shifting uncomfortably, her eyes lingering on Lily's focused expression, as if seeing something she hadn't expected. A guest nearby, his tie loosened, whispered to another, "The kid's got guts, but she's no match for him." Clara wanted to scream, to tell them they didn't know Lily, didn't know the fire Henry had kindled in her, but she stayed silent, her hands clenched, watching as Lily moved a bishop, her face betraying nothing but quiet determination. Lily's next move was a deliberate sacrifice, sliding her bishop into the path of Victor's knight, the piece clicking softly against the board. The room erupted in laughter, guests shaking their heads, their voices overlapping. "She's done for," a man in a tuxedo called out, his voice slurred with champagne. Victor leaned back, his smirk widening, his fingers drumming on the table. "Nice try, kid. Maybe stick to checkers next time." Clara's heart sank, her eyes stinging as she searched Lily's face for any sign of defeat, any crack in her daughter's resolve. But Lily didn't flinch, her fingers hovering over the board, her lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes flicking not to the board but to Victor's face, as if reading something in his smug expression. Evelyn Moore, now standing just behind the crowd, tilted her head, her voice barely audible but sharp with recognition. "Smart girl, she's baiting him." Clara's breath caught, the words igniting a spark of hope that battled the dread coiling in her chest. Jackson's live stream exploded with comments, his voice rising with excitement as he leaned closer to the table. "Is this kid actually in this? Stay tuned, folks." Lily moved a pawn, her hand steady, her gaze locked on Victor, who laughed again, but his fingers hesitated over his next piece, a flicker of doubt crossing his face for the first time. Mr. Alcott, the hotel manager, appeared at the edge of the crowd, his scowl deepening as he caught Clara's eye, mouthing, "Get her out of there." His sharp gesture made her flinch, but she couldn't move, rooted by Lily's quiet strength, her daughter's small frame a beacon in the sea of mocking faces. A woman in a sequined gown leaned toward her friend, whispering, "The mother must be mortified." Clara's cheeks burned, the words cutting deeper than the crowd's laughter, but she straightened, refusing to let their judgment break her. Lily's next move, a subtle rook adjustment, drew puzzled murmurs from the guests, their amusement fading into confusion. Evelyn's eyes narrowed, her fingers tapping her glass as if piecing together Lily's strategy, her lips curving into a faint, approving smile. Victor, growing impatient, slammed a piece down, his voice sharp. "Come on, kid, let's wrap this up." But Lily's silence was louder than his bravado, her calm unnerving him, her eyes studying not just the board but him. Clara's heart pounded, caught between fear and a swelling pride, as the game teetered on a knife's edge, the tension coiling tighter with every move. Tessa's grip on her clutch tightened, her eyes wide with something like awe, and Jackson's voice cracked with excitement, his phone trembling in his hands. "Something's happening here, folks," he whispered, the crowd's energy shifting, the conversation between Victor and Lily hanging in the air, sharp and unresolved, as the game moved toward a moment no one could predict. The Grand Meridian's ballroom had fallen into a charged silence, the clink of champagne glasses and careless laughter replaced by a tense hush, every eye riveted on the small table where Victor Sterling's king stood cornered. Lily Hayes, her 8-year-old frame barely filling the chair, studied the chessboard with an unnerving calm, her small hands steady despite the weight of the moment. Clara Hayes stood behind her daughter, her knuckles white around an empty tray, her heart pounding so fiercely she thought it might burst through her chest. Victor's last move, a reckless rook push, had exposed his queen, and Clara saw Lily's lips twitch, a fleeting sign of the trap she'd set. Victor leaned forward, his smirk gone, sweat beading on his brow, his fingers hovering over his king as if searching for an escape. "You're out of your depth, kid," he said, but his voice trembled, stripped of the bravado that had filled the room earlier. Lily's eyes flicked to his face, not the board, and she slid a pawn forward with a soft click that cut through the silence like a blade. The crowd held its breath, their phones raised, capturing every second. Jackson Reed, the influencer live-streaming the match, whispered into his phone, his voice hoarse with excitement. "This kid's about to make history, folks, live, in front of millions." Tessa Vaughn, Victor's secretary, clutched her purse so tightly her nails dug into the leather, her eyes wide with unease. Evelyn Moore, Victor's ruthless rival, stood closer, her crimson dress stark against the crowd, her sharp smile gleaming as if she'd been waiting for this moment to see her adversary unravel. Victor moved his queen, a desperate bid to regain control, his hand shaking, betraying the confidence he'd worn like armor. Lily's response was swift, her knight sliding to the center, cutting off his retreat with a precision that made Clara's chest tighten. The crowd gasped, their earlier amusement turning to stunned disbelief. Clara's eyes stung, watching her daughter orchestrate a battlefield Victor couldn't navigate. Victor's laugh was hollow, forced, as he moved his bishop, his fingers lingering on the piece as if sensing the end. Lily studied the board, her face unreadable, then whispered, "Grandpa said, don't just play the board, play the man." Her voice was soft but clear, silencing the murmurs around her. She slid her rook forward, the piece clicking with finality. "Checkmate," she said, the word landing like a thunderclap. Victor stared, his face draining of color, his jaw tightening as his eyes darted across the board, searching for a mistake that wasn't there. His hands clenched into fists, a flush of anger creeping up his neck, the humiliation of losing to a child in front of the city's elites searing through him. The guests erupted, some clapping, others whispering, their phones capturing the billionaire's defeat. Jackson's voice cracked as he shouted, "She did it! The kid checkmated Victor Sterling." Tessa's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes shimmering with awe, While Evelyn's applause cut through, slow and deliberate, her gaze locked on Victor's crumbling facade. Victor shoved his chair back, the scrape harsh against the marble floor, his face twisted with rage. "This is absurd," he snapped, his voice low but venomous, his eyes blazing as he glared at Lily, then at the crowd. "The fluke. A child." His words dripped with scorn, but the tremble in his voice betrayed his embarrassment, the sting of being outplayed by an 8-year-old in his own arena. Clara's tray slipped from her hands, clattering unnoticed as she knelt beside Lily, her hands trembling on her daughter's shoulder. "You did it, sweetheart," she whispered, tears prickling her eyes, pride swelling over her fear. Lily turned, her brown eyes calm but bright. "Grandpa taught me," she said softly, her words carrying Henry Dawson's legacy. Clara's throat tightened, memories of her father's chess lessons flooding back, his patient voice, his calloused hands guiding Lily's fingers, his belief she could outsmart anyone. The crowd parted as Evelyn approached, her heels clicking, her voice smooth but edged. "Impressive, little one. You've got your grandfather's mind, and his spine." Victor's eyes flashed, his anger flaring at Evelyn's jab, but the weight of the crowd's stares and Jackson's livestream, now viral with millions watching, held him in place. Clara rose, her legs unsteady but her resolve hardening, and faced Victor, her voice finding strength. "Her grandfather taught her," she said, loud enough for the crowd to hear, her words cutting through the murmurs. "Henry Dawson, whose designs you stole to build your empire, Victor. You took his ideas, his dreams, and gave him nothing. His granddaughter just settled the score." The accusation landed like a blow, the room falling silent, phones capturing every word. Victor's face reddened, his fists clenching tighter, his embarrassment boiling into fury. "You think this changes anything?" he spat, his voice rising, but the crowd's murmurs grew louder, their judgment shifting. Jackson leaned closer, his phone unwavering, narrating, "The pressure's on, folks, Sterling's losing it." Guests whispered, some shaking their heads, others nodding at Clara's words, the livestream's comment section exploding with demands for Victor to honor his promise. Tessa stepped forward, her voice shaky. "Victor, the cameras, everyone's watching." Her eyes pleaded, but his glare silenced her, though his hands trembled, the weight of public scrutiny pressing down. Victor's chest heaved, his eyes darting to the crowd, then to Jackson's phone, the livestream's red light a relentless spotlight. The guests' whispers turned to murmurs of expectation. "He said 50 million, one said. "Pay up," another muttered. Evelyn crossed her arms, her smile sharp, sensing his cornered state. Victor's jaw worked, his anger warring with the reality of his public promise, now amplified to millions online. He reached into his suit jacket, pulling out a checkbook, his movements jerky with suppressed rage. "Fine," he growled, scribbling furiously, his pen tearing at the paper. He tore out the check, $50 million, made out to Lily Hayes, and thrust it toward Clara, his eyes blazing with humiliation. "Take it and get out of my sight," he said, his voice low, venomous. Clara took the check, her hands steady despite the tremor in her heart, and tucked it into her apron, her gaze never leaving his. "This doesn't erase what you did to my father," she said, her voice quiet but firm, "but it's a start." The crowd erupted in applause, some cheering for Lily, others for Clara's courage, their phones capturing the moment Victor's empire bent to a child's victory. Mr. Alcott appeared, his scowl softened, almost uncertain. "Clara, good work," he muttered, turning away quickly, as if unsure how to handle the shift in the room's power. Guests approached Lily, offering quiet congratulations, their earlier mockery replaced by awe. A woman in a sequined gown paused beside Clara. "Your daughter's incredible," she said, her voice genuine. Clara nodded, her throat tight. Evelyn lingered, her gaze on Clara, a slow nod of respect passing between them. Clara pulled Lily close, tears spilling over as she whispered, "You showed them all, sweetheart." The check in her pocket felt heavy, but it was Lily's triumph, Henry's legacy, that burned brightest. Jackson knelt beside Lily, grinning. "Kid, you're a legend. Say something to the world." Lily shook her head, closing her chessboard. "I just wanted to play," she said, and Clara's laugh was warm, fierce with pride. The ballroom's lights glowed brighter, the weight of their struggles lighter, as Clara and Lily stepped toward the exit, their victory a fire that outshone the chandeliers, fueled by a grandfather's lessons and a mother's unbreakable love. If Clara and Lily's triumph moved you, hit that like button to let us know. Share this story with someone who needs a spark of hope, and subscribe to join us for more tales of human strength and unexpected victories. Your support keeps these stories alive, and we can't wait to bring you the next one.